fingers away.
I can do what I want. Almost agreement at gmail.com. We had a little faux pas, so we started over. So you missed 5 minutes of me talking about alumni band. We might touch on it again. Almostagreement.com website, YouTube, Twitter, all that kind of stuff. I guess X now. Facebook, favorite podcast writer. Look us up there. Like, friend, follow, tell your friends about it, share it. We've got an exciting 24 race already starting to come together here locally. And the 23 race isn't even over yet. So, I mean, it kind of is, I guess. But anyway, we're almost in agreement, and we're going to start a show as soon as the intro gets out of the way. Hey, buddy.
Hey.
What's with you?
Not much.
What's new? What's exciting? Tell me something.
Let's see here. Shit. Nothing.
That's a wrap.
No.
Call it a show. So, yeah, like I said in the intro, we started recording in the dog went ape shit. We had one of the kids' friends came over, and it just got a little bit too much, and I couldn't find a good place to splice myself back in. And so...
Why even mention it?
I don't know. Because
our listeners were none the wiser.
Well, but I also reference the fact that I don't edit things because I want the full context in play, and so I think it's fair to say that we've already been going for, even though it's only 2 minutes into the episode, we've already been going for like 10. So just expect the crazy to get 10 minutes earlier than you're used to, I guess.
Oh, shit.
So I'm super pleased with myself. I reached out to Mr. Matt Shears because one of the topics on the Compass Guy shows was a lot of people are starting to put their treasures into place and stuff like that for 24 races, and so there's a lot of talk of who's running to replace some of these county commission seats that are going to be either like Kyle Ward, District 4, for example, has already announced he's not planning to run for the seat, so there's a couple people who are already in the process to do that. There's a couple of people that are termed out, so they can't come back, and so there's people already starting to file for their seat. There's a few people rumored to be going out of city or commission seats and going into state seats. The big question is who's going to replace Gloria in District 90, as Gloria is running for Senate, although we think you could technically run for both at the same time. But one of the factors, which I guess you might agree with this, I don't know, it's a weird ism. So in the state of Tennessee legislature, you cannot fundraise while you are in session. So one of the reasons is the session is short and pressed to the front of the year, so that those whom are on an election year, so especially on even years, those guys are pushing through to get session over with so they can go fundraise and run for re-election. And so the point of...
But they technically can't fundraise while they're in session?
They cannot fundraise while in session.
Okay. So I guess it's opposite from federal Congress.
Well, they've just fundraised
not
all
really
the time.
opposite, but yeah.
Right, but the joke is that they finish their day early so they can fundraise all afternoon.
Yeah.
In federal. But and so like I kind of get it, like on that same like on the topic, like I understand it as like it seems like a somewhat functional fundraising rule. And the idea of saying, well, then if you're fundraising and voting on things at the same time, well, some donor can't just pop up while you're voting on a thing that affects that donor and make it it makes it a little bit more harder to make a direct donation to say, hey, vote yes on this bill. Here's my max donation. Like, they don't say that, but it's like, this thing's in front of you and I'm involved in it. Here's a max donation. If you're in session, it's more of a straight line. Not that they don't do that in some way, shape, or form anyway.
That's what's going to wonder, like, even like in session, if they happen to have like a meet and greet. I mean, they're not asking for donations, but at the same time, are they allowed to say, like...
That is a good question.
Hey, if you want to support...
Like, can they have a donate button on their campaign website that it can actively take donations while session's going? I don't think... the inference I get from conversation is no. They cannot. Now, like, parties can, and they could... But I don't know. It's a good question. But so anyway, like the point of it being so those straight line donation to voting thing can't happen, but it's at the same time it's like, well, even years they just scream through sessions and get out of there faster, and it's like, well,
All right.
so okay, cool, we're not letting them take donations while they're voting on stuff, but now they're squeezing things into smaller windows, not paying too much attention, not putting enough effort into what they're doing, so they can get out of there and start making donations.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I guess that's better.
Yeah, but I wonder if like in session, if they're able to, have some kind of like weird like meet and greet, and just be like,
I mean, they could certainly do a
hey,
meet and greet, but if
you
it
like
can't
us,
be
we have this website that if you're interested in helping support.
I know it's a good question.
I don't know if that kind of verbiage would be considered soliciting donations.
It's a good question.
Just by saying like, hey, we have this.
But Gloria, on the other hand, since she's not running for a state seat, she can fundraise for her Senate race all the time. She doesn't have that restriction because she's not fundraising for a state seat.
Yeah, I guess within the state's terms.
Right. It's the seat you are seeking's rule, not the seat
you occupy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's the seat. Right. Yeah. Because the seat you're seeking is not under the same set of rules because it's a federal seat, not a state seat.
Right.
Which is still crazy. I mean, I don't know what the right way to do it. It goes into the whole conversation about money in politics. What's the better way to do this thing? I don't know that the way that Tennessee's doing it, but at least it's kind of an attempt, I suppose, in some level, to be like, okay, focus on what you're doing here in Nashville. Don't worry about the other stuff.
All right.
And then you have most of the rest of the year to go get reelected.
I mean, I see the logic for the rules. Like I think it might have been last episode we brought it up, or I may have brought it up that I'm pretty sure for a lot of federal elections there is a kind of like time frame of once you announce your candidacy or announce you're running, there is a set window in which you can actually collect donations towards your campaign.
I mean, I know there's a window.
I mean, outside of that, you could essentially just, like I said, I probably said last episode, run for 5 years and just amass this fucking war chest. It may dwindle leading on. Like, I thought you said you were running last year.
Right.
But I mean, a lot of people that are just none the wiser are continuing to just add to your war chest, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, I got $5 million. Like, let's go to town.
I suppose. I guess. I don't know. Because like when...
that's why most federal election processes have a timeline of like, I think at least for like presidential, they have it to like once you announce.
Chris Davis, hit me up. Help me understand these things. Because really, listen, because like one of the things that Tyler was saying last time he was in here, he still has to file from when he ran for mayor because he still has money left in his campaign account. He's not doing anything. He's not taking more donations.
Right, he has to
he's
file
not running for anything, but he has to file quarterly financial reports because he still has money in his campaign account. Because
to the state or IRS thing?
No, it's to the election commission here in the county. And so, like, if you go to the county, the election commission website, it's like I understand why it's set up the way it is, but it's kind of a pain in the ass because when you go looking for financial disclosures, there's like 500 people listed. It's anybody who has an active campaign account, whether they're running for anything currently or not.
Have to disclose their financials.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they actively have to disclose their financials, even though they're not actively running for anything. And so, again, good questions, Chris Davis.
Yeah.
Chris Davis.
Love to hear from you.
Let us know. Tell us the truth about it. I can't talk that fast on purpose to screw with Chris Davis. Anyway, and so, yeah, so lots of bodies and stuff moving around. But I'd like... Maybe my proudest politics moment was earlier today. I was talking to a Scouts colleague, for lack of a better word, yesterday. We had our roundup thing. It's our recruiting thing that we do at the schools, all that kind of stuff. And I was talking to one of the other parents, basically, who said a friend of his is going to run for 18, which is our seat here locally. And I was like, cool, who is it? And he's told me the guy's name. And I was like, well, cool. He's like, if you want to, and I guess I'd never told him about doing the podcast. Where I was like, well, you should check out my podcast and I'll probably need to have him on at some point. He's like, yeah, you should. I was like, okay, cool. So he's going to get his email and all that kind of stuff. And so while Compass guys were rolling today, they were talking about all these different people running. And so while we were sitting there, I was texting Matt Shears. I was like, hey, man, who do we got running for 18 this year? Who do you think's going to challenge Elaine Davis for 18? And He gave me some vague answer, but basically, because let me correct that. I texted him. I said, on the record, who's running for 18?
All right.
And so he said, I've got two people that are like 80% on board. But since they're not 100%, I'm not going to tell you their names. And so then I texted him back the name of the guy that my buddy was telling me about. He's like, how'd you find out about that? And I was like, I don't reveal my sources. And so it was just kind of fun. Like, I mean, it's silly. It's nonsensical. It's not important, but it's kind of fun to have start getting to play in the rumor mill of the game. That's a little bit behind the scenes.
True.
Because there's known names. Like this guy's, I've never heard of this guy before who I was told about. But then some of the other names are known names in city or county government already. There's often, and this is kind of the least well kept secret in Knoxville, is that Mayor Jacobs is looking to run probably for governor to replace Governor Lee.
Wow.
Apparently that's been kind of an open secret for before he even got reelected for county mayor this last time around.
I could see a chance of it happening, but going back to what you were saying, I'd say it happens very often that there are a lot of people that look at jumping into a race, but
right,
kind of get like,
well, because here's the thing to me,
a third of the way into it, kind of like getting their full leg, not their toes into it.
Well, because I think the thing to me, and I get it, but I'm not sure how I feel about it. Right. Like my gut reaction is I don't like it, but like the thing to me that I find problematic is we discussed it in these city races that we just had. We had the ABC, and there was a person in A, a person in B, a person in C that are all kind of connected directly to the Democratic Party in Knoxville, which that's not a slight, that's fine, I'm not questioning that, but it's like, it's pretty clear that the three of them made it clear they weren't running against each other, and so that they chose, Matt Best wasn't a choice. Matt Best was specifically put there to unseat Amelia Parker and failed miserably, but that was his job. Like, he was assigned to said job. Don't know who said it. I'm not saying there's some cabal of people pulling strings, but according to him in interviews, he was like, constituents wanted me to run for this seat. And he emphasizes this seat, not a seat, this seat.
Right.
And so who else, what other reason could that logically be than you're trying to get Amelia out of there? So, okay, that one's checked off of the list. But then you had Debbie Helsley and Cameron Brooks, rest in peace, whom took B and C respectively. It's like, well, why did they take B and C? Why didn't they end up primarying each other in B? Or why didn't they run against each other in C? Because there was a conversation somewhere that they weren't going to run against each other because they're ideologically similar. So they're just going to split voters. And I'm like, again, I understand the strategic logic of it,
right,
but I don't necessarily feel good about that. And so on the Mayor Jacobs part, it is likely that over the next year or so, the real conversation starts happening about how serious he is about it. And the real conversation is going to be with the state GOP and other mayors from around the state and other political players like Andrew Davis, who was one of his longtime campaign advisor or campaign chairs and was one of his top advisors in his administration, just left to go to some state level politics stuff, to a different consulting group or something. I can't remember what the title is. And so it's like, well, he's already starting to dismantle what he is here. So where's he going? He's going to the state level, and so he'll start, all the different people that are in the periphery that aren't the names we know are already conversing about who's going to run. And then there'll be a conversation. It's like, well, some of it's logical. Some of it could be Jacobs sits in and says, well, this dude's running, this dude's running, this dude's running, and I don't want to run against those people.
Right.
I don't want to primary against those people. It's not good for any of us. I'll get out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure any smart politician has those kind of feelers that they put out.
I mean, it's
in the periphery that doesn't get picked up.
But it's the complicated ego of a politician, especially an executive level politician.
Well, it's an ego. I mean, I would think it's more so logical. It's like, I'm getting ready to launch this major thing. Is there really support for it? I think there may be. I want to think that the constituents, may want to elect me, but at the same time, is there really that desire for somebody new or something?
I think the real question is can I beat them? I think that's the real question. Is can I beat them?
There's that as well.
Because I think in their own head, they're the best person for the job 99 times out of 100. They're the best person for the job. Can I beat them? And then there's a secondary. I think the second question is, Can I or is this going to be significantly damaged to the party at whole? I think those are the two top questions. Selfishly, can I beat them? And is this something that the party is going to push back against? Because the only way a primary comes out if it's me and you is it's going to get dirty between me and you, which is going to shed poor light on the party at large.
You think they're looking at both?
I think the party's looking at that 100% number 1A. I think that's what the party's job is.
Well, I guess the bigger question is how much power does the constituent and their camp have versus the party?
I think the party has all the power. Because I think that's where the most of these decisions get made is of who's running a primary. And I think for Tennessee at least, it's exclusively the GOP has the party. I don't think the Democratic Party, whether local or state level, has the same conversation. Because for maybe inside Nashville and Memphis proper, since they're such strong blue cities, it may be a little bit more like what I'm talking about with the GOP. But like, for a Knox County situation, and I did tell Matt he was on the record, so I'll say it, is one of the two people that are running for 18 that he's pretty sure are going to run is not definitionally a Democrat, and he's okay with that. And the only reason I didn't ask him why, but the only reason that makes sense to me why he's okay with that is who cares as long as we beat that Republican, and specifically Elaine Davis being a worse than average Republican, especially in the Democrats' view. I could see it.
Oh.
And so I could see the logic of it I think to the power parts of the play, the power players in the game, it's a zero-sum game. It's a we win or lose, or maybe even it's a backwards win zero-sum game. It's a they lose is the only way we win. It's not so much that we won; it's that they lost.
Yeah.
But especially for the Democrats in the more red places around the state, because just anything to shift the power balance in Nashville is all they want. But I think if the roles were flipped, it'd be the same thing. I think a Republican Party chair, a local Republican Party, would be more apt to be comfortable with a less Republican on a ticket beating any Democrat. Period. If the roles were flipped,
all right.
Because I just think I think once you get, especially in a Tennessee supermajority situation, once you get to that level, you don't care as long as the supermajority is getting smaller.
That's
because
what
then you can
say.
run on that too.
That's what I was say. If Matt's ever kind of talked about that, if he has much like inner dealings with other party chairs in other districts,
that's a good question.
As far as if there is any kind of effort to slowly try to chip away.
I mean, I think that's the. I mean, again, it goes back to at the end of the day, both parties take their orders from national. And so at the end of the day, the Republican Party platform is X, and that is produced by the national party. And then the local parties get to play, like the state party gets to be a little bit more, it's kind of like the way our governments are working right now anyway, which I don't like, as I've talked about a bunch of times. The top level has all the power, and then you have the middle level that's the state that has a little bit of flexible in there. And then the local doesn't have to be exact. And so it's like the top level just says, I don't care. The federal just says, I don't care what you guys are doing locally as long as you are pushing our national candidates. The state levels are like, kind of care what you're doing locally, but as long as your state candidates are coming through as our party, we'll be okay. And then the local party is playing the same game. It's just like, we just need to get as many of our team into the local governments as possible. And so, but this unnamed character, because I guess his name's Brian. I gotta look it up. I forgot it already. Apparently, it's if you hate Republicans in Tennessee, vote for Brian next year, no matter where you live in the county. Apparently, a Brian Democrat is running in your district, is what it seems is going to be my running joke from now on. Goldberg, Brian Goldberg. But apparently, again, this is rumor. I have not confirmed any of this, but apparently, my man Eddie Manis is going to be a part of his campaign team. Victor Ashe has already been rumored to be supporting his campaign process.
Damn.
Because that was one of my jokes to Matt. I was like, I hear one of these guys isn't so democratic. Like, he's got two pretty prominent Republicans
Right.
supporting him.
That's interesting.
But it's not. I mean, Victor Ashe is not.
How's it not?
Victor Ashe is not a Republican by the new standard of republicanism. Republicans don't consider Victor Ashe a Republican, and so you don't have a. So,
I mean, but when did this new quote unquote republicanism come to be? To where all of a sudden, like, this is just we wipe away like the quote unquote like old republicanism.
well, to be specific, the example, Eddie Manis was his republicanism was questioned in his attempt to run as a Republican for 18 when he did run, and
2-3 years ago.
yeah.
Okay.
And to the point where they had that phone call that we sat in on, that was the crazy weirdest phone call that I've ever sat in on, but that we listened to that whole like phone call.
Right.
And I've been thinking about it, especially given the current circumstances we're talking about. It's like Eddie Manis, first time I talked to him, I remember asking him. I was like, one of the things going on right now is everybody's like, you're not really a Republican. And I don't really understand what that means. Because that's one of my things that I've always pushed against. And his answer was, to me, that's like somebody telling me I'm not really a Christian because their version of Christianity is different than mine. And I was like, I thought that was pretty smart.
Right.
But then I actually got smarter in how this thing works. No, there are simple may be an overstatement. There are specific rules on what it means to be a Republican in the state of Tennessee. There are bylaws, and those bylaws are very specific. The easiest, most forthright one is, have you donated to Democrats? Have Democrats donated to you? And have you voted in a Democratic primary? If any of those things have occurred, you're not a Republican by state GOP bylaws.
Oh, is that according to their
bylaws, which I have a copy, a couple-year-old copy here somewhere. But yeah, and Eddie Manis does not check any of those boxes. And realistically, Eddie Manis was not a Republican according to the Republicans because he didn't follow the protocol. Because that was the year that we had a bunch of trans sports high school bills getting talked about and stuff like that. And he openly said, no, I don't think that doesn't make sense. I don't think we should do this. And that was not the Republican line on it, and that makes you not a Republican.
I don't that specific case, I don't think that makes you not a Republican.
But according to the people who get to decide who is and who isn't a Republican, the state and local party executives, it does.
I mean, I agree that's their quote unquote standards, but as far as like the general public, I don't think that
because the general public like me, I don't know
because the party says so does not mean the general public cannot or should perceive a candidate as such.
Well, because again, as I like to say all the time, I don't think the general public knows how it works.
Right.
And what does the R mean after somebody's name? They're a Republican. What does that mean? I don't know.
I mean, it gets down to a damn near like existential definition of what something is or isn't.
Right, but it's one of those things that I bitch about all the time. Like I think it should, like, if you put a symbol after somebody's name, don't care what it is, don't care what aspect it is, but then that symbol means something, quote unquote, then what that meaning is should be understood by the person who's reading it.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, those quote unquote definitions have become more and more broad.
I agree.
But
also more and more narrow.
Romney just decided he was going to retire, but he was
a great
quote
speech.
Unquote Republican.
Great speech.
I didn't see a speech.
Loved it. I mean, basically, like, he's still Romney. He's still an old school Republican. But like, I mean, he took shots at Biden and the Hunter and all that kind of different stuff, and then immediately took shots at Trump and what's his name,
DeSantis?
No, his son-in-law. Trump,
Kushner,
he did like 4 or 5 different like left, right, back and forth. Like, he called out McCarthy for being too fucking old, and he called out Pelosi for announcing her intent to run again.
Yeah,
he's like, I'm too old for this. And then apparently there's a Politico, I think it was, maybe, had been doing a biography on him, and he's quoted in the biography as something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing the quote as I heard it,
right,
but it was something along the lines of, some of the other people that I work with in D.C. talk about trying to go out and golf and do retirement things and wanting to kill themselves. Meaning they can't stand the idea of retirement.
Right.
Meaning
they don't know what else they would do.
Right. They don't. You're right. They don't know what else they can do with themselves. But the question, I guess, to me, and maybe this is the implication that I picked up off it, is so it no longer it's so much ego that it's no longer am I the best person to do this job. It's I don't know what else to do with myself. Like, am I the most capable? Am I the best representative of my people? Maybe, maybe not. But I don't want to retire.
Yeah.
So that means it doesn't mean no, you're not the best for the job, but it certainly doesn't mean you are either. Just because you don't want to quit working.
Right.
You know, and so at some point, we the people.
I mean, to an extent, I mean, we have that kind of like self-gratification of wanting to feel like we still have that ability and we want to do better.
I mean, I get it. I can't. I don't
still
vacation.
Capable of it.
I'm I vacation super poorly. I'm on my phone checking sales. I'm on my phone talking to staff. I'm on my phone dealing with a vendor or something like that. I'm on my phone, or I bring my computer on vacation with me, and I'm doing work stuff on my computer while I'm on vacation. And it's like I have a hard time. I can't turn. I'm not at that age, but I don't turn it off. I have a really hard time turning it off, at least for long periods of time. Like, the idea of me not being able to be in touch with staff for a week freaks me out. It gives me a little heart palpitation.
Yeah.
But, so anyway, yeah, we can argue what a Republican is and isn't for days, and neither of us are right and neither of us are wrong. That's the fun part about, and whether that's intentional on their side or not.
I wouldn't call it fun, but
I would have a good time with it because I like that kind of shit. But I think
that's more of a fault of the party itself.
I agree with you. I think that's the part of that.
They want to play both sides.
I think that right.
Oh, we still want to encourage and welcome the old school, but at the same time no,
we don't want to encourage and welcome. We just want their votes when we ask them for them. But they don't say it that way. They say it the nice way. Because we just want them to fall in line and do the things that we want them to do. This is where the party's going. I mean, that was the Pence speech about, the new conservatism and how conservatism isn't about populism and whatever. And it's like, dude, at some level, even conservatism everything's about populism at some level because you're getting elected.
You could argue that for the Democratic side as well. So, I mean, I
agree.
I can't say that, that was a wholly just Republican standpoint.
No, I'm just stating for the fact that it's that even right now, as we're watching the primaries go on in the weird-ass Republican primaries that we have right now, even as we're watching it go on, the definition of Republican is in flux.
Yeah.
I mean, and would it, like, and for Pence's sake, just for the sake of illusion, I suppose, if he somehow pulled off the primary win, which ain't going to happen, but if he somehow pulled it off, does that then give him the populist support to go to his new version of conservatism that's not populist? Like, how does that work?
Yeah.
How do you justify that phrasing?
I don't think I sent it to you, but there was an interesting article about kind of Trump, I guess. I think it was a political article that they put out like a questionnaire to a bunch of like actual like county party chair people as far as, and I think it was mainly focused on the GOP side as to whether or not those party chairs were, going to be promoting a certain presidential candidate. It was kind of interesting to kind of see I think there were some that weren't quite like fully on board with Trump, and the same with like DeSantis, but a lot of them, didn't really want to like pick sides.
And I think definitionally,
at this point,
I think definitionally by the job title, when they're not like, I think Matt told me this once, is that they are not supposed to play in the primary,
right?
As a party, whomever is primaried into the seat, they are then to support. That's the rules of the game,
right?
Is they're never supposed to be involved in any particular person's primary. They're supposed to support all primary candidates that are under their banner, and then whomever takes that primary.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how they worded like the question to these, party chairs, but I mean, it went down to like the county level in multiple states.
Right.
But I think it was more so trying to get, their honest opinion upon like, if this was going on right now, like what candidate would you, or your county party, feel putting as the front runner, essentially.
I mean, if I were the county chair, though, my answer would be whomever wins the primary. I mean, I think, like I said, I think that's the definition of both parties is that they're not, that it doesn't matter Now that you could say for you personally, but I think that's where they politically don't answer the question.
Right. That's where they.
Who would you personally prefer? And
many don't, but I think it was. I think the headline was kind of led off to believe that I guess kind of like the anti-Trump, may have some kind of sliver of hope that there were at least a number of county chairs that were like, hey, we're not fully on board for Trump, but if he is, whatever. But
I think
we wouldn't necessarily at this juncture solely just back Trump for this.
Right. I think if I think in 2016 the majority of Republicans were not Trump Republicans.
Yeah.
He didn't win the primary with a majority of the votes. He just won a primary with that's a technical term. Plurality. Yeah, he won with a plurality, not a majority. So it was like 36%. He won the primary, but 36% of the vote because there were so many other candidates, which he's going to do again. He's going to win with less than 50% of the votes as these primaries start happening. He's not going to get 55, 60, 65% of the vote. He's going to get 30, 35, 40, 30, 35. And then once it's all said and done, his total is going to be in the mid-30s or something like that. And actually what I think is crazy is, at least in the current polling on it, he might actually get a higher percentage of the vote, even though I don't think he's going to break 50 still. But he may get a higher percentage of the vote than he did in 2016, which I think is kind of crazy. That's what the polling's leaning towards.
Yeah. I think at this point there's only one state, I guess, that has tried to appeal the, or try to bring about the 14th Amendment as far as trying to take him off of the ballot.
That'd be interesting.
Currently, I think that's the only one that's actually, I think it's actually going to court in Colorado. And a handful of others, I guess, have come out recently as far as it's not Secretary of State, but I guess like the State Election Commission. I think New Hampshire may have came out, or Secretary of State. I think New Hampshire may have come out recently and said, I don't see any reason to legally take him off the ballot.
New Hampshire's got a secondary, is in a whole primary issue right now anyway. Apparently in their state constitution, they are to be the first primary state. And for the Democratic side of the ticket, they changed the order. And New Hampshire's no longer the first Democratic primary state. It's South Carolina. And New Hampshire's pissed about it.
I think there's always been some kind of jockeying in the past, 10, 20 years as far as who's going to be the first state to do this or that.
Well, and the question, but the real question is, why did the Democrats want to change the order? What value does that have to them to change the order?
Yeah. You could argue it builds momentum.
Right. Because I know, and realistically, at least, maybe not realistically, my understanding of it more or less is that Biden does pretty well with black Democrats, and there are no black Democrats in New Hampshire. And so they want the first primary to be a state that Biden's going to win well at. And so they moved it to South Carolina. That's the theory I've heard, at least.
I would not consider South Carolina a Democratic stronghold, so I'm not sure how that
But of the people who vote in Democratic primaries in South Carolina, there are many more black voters, and black voters tend to like Joe Biden. That's the thought process.
Okay. Oh.
Well, because if you go back to 2020, you had Iowa, New Hampshire, and then South Carolina. Biden did not win Iowa. Biden did not win New Hampshire, but he won South Carolina running away, and that's when the momentum, as you said, started kicking off for Biden.
Oh, he won South Carolina?
Yeah.
That's where they had a Republican governor and mainly a Republican stronghold as far as in South Carolina.
That's fine because the Republicans aren't voting in the primary. It's only the Democrats in the state. Tennessee is one of very few states that holds open primaries. And even if you don't hold, even if you're in a state like Tennessee, you only get to pick one primary ballot to pick up. And especially if you're in a Republican stronghold state, like you're saying in South Carolina is, then I would say Democrats pick up Republican ballots if they can, because that's more likely to be picking who's going to win. That's my theory on voting here.
Yeah.
When we go to primary, and it is illegal, I guess, but I'm not a Republican, but I pick up Republican primaries, and that is against the law. That is a Class E misdemeanor. If anybody wants to challenge me, have at it. But I only get to pick up one, but I always pick up Republican ones here because at least historically, District 18 for state races, District 4 for county races, I will have a primary there where I won't have a primary on the Democratic side of the ticket.
Yeah.
So I pick up the Republicans because I actually get to vote for some shit in the primary. And at the end of the day, Testerman, Davis, Manis, Oster, I'm really picking who's going to be the winner of the race then because the Democrat, at least historically, doesn't have a chance. Now, Matt still tells me they can flip 18. I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. Even with this Eddie Manis, Victor Ashe.
I mean, how close was the most recent election?
I mean, the most recent election was Cat Bike beating Will Edwards, and Cat Bike is a Democrat in the school board race. First time the school board race is partisan.
Outside of school board. As far as just District 18.
I'd have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure Elaine Davis put a pretty good thwomping on Greg McKay. Right. And I know Eddie Manis walked away and beat up on Virginia Couch pretty good too. And that's when I met Matt for the first time and talked to him for the first time was when it was the Eddie Manis Virginia Couch race. And he was like, yeah, Virginia's a good candidate. I think we got a good shot at getting good turnout there. It was like a 60-40.
Virginia Couch was the Democratic side?
Mm-hmm. And I like Virginia. I thought she was great. I thought she was cool.
Yeah.
I liked Eddie Manis better personally on that one. Now, had Virginia run, I would have preferred Virginia. I think Virginia is now one of the state Democratic Party reps from the district. Like every district has a male and a female rep in the state for the state house that's on the state party, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And I think she's now the District 18 Democratic Party rep woman. Which that's an interesting thing in the gender equality crazy games that are going on right now. How long do you think that's going to stick around?
Yeah, I would not have expected that they wanted a male and female counterpart of each
district
party in each district.
Both parties do it. Both parties have like district state senate seat 6 has a male and a female.
It'd be curious to get her in there and like, the fuck do you do as the female counterpart of District 815 for the Democratic Knox County Democratic?
Yeah, what exactly is your new title position thing?
Right.
And what does that mean? And does that mean you're going to run for like a different seat in the future? Is this just like
why do we need two of you?
Right.
Is this coming out of tax coffers or is this coming out of campaign funds that have been donated to you?
Good question.
Yeah.
Are you getting? I'm assuming it's a volunteer position for her end.
Right.
But they get paid for it. Like, what's his face with the
yeah, on her end, but it's still costing money at some point in some area.
Right, she's got a road trip to Nashville or whatever periodically for meetings and this, that, and the other, and somebody's got to pay for that. And it may be out of pocket. They may the
party's still paying for it.
The state party may kick in persons, and then where the state party gets their money. It's a good question.
Yeah,
man, you're full of good questions tonight. I like it.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I'm appreciating you, okay?
Well, thank you.
Can I do that without some sass?
I wasn't trying to give you sass.
Damn, son.
I appreciate your appreciation.
All right, so we talked about Choto last week?
Yep.
Do you know where that is?
I know where it is. Exactly where it is. And like, as far
I'm just making fun of how defensive you got when I brought it up and last time. Anyway, so this whole Choto landing thing, it was the affordable housing thing.
Right.
So Dominion, the developer, just said, fuck it. I'm not dealing with the bullshit.
Right.
And so there is a new model, neighborhoods of Knox County and city of Knoxville. Get you some PR person and go ape shit. And the developer just say, fuck it and leave. Which goes back again to, we don't want growth. We don't want it.
I read I don't know who exactly put it out, but whoever put out like the statement for that Choto community or whatever. And kind of like put it as like, we're showing what it takes when a community comes together and blah, 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 blah.
To be shitty fucking assholes. My brother lives there. I'm sure he had no fucking clue and didn't pay a bit of attention to it. Because that's another one of those things about these things is that it's 10 people. Like, I've been going to these neighborhood meetings around Central, trying to meet the neighborhood leadership. Right. It's like there's 7 people there. How many people live in this neighborhood? 2,500.
Right. But at the same time, from a board that is looking at those that actually come out and try to say something.
Because that's
the only...
Right, and those that are playing the game are probably voters too.
Right. Well, that's the only input they're getting.
Right.
So they're like, oh, fuck, like 8 people showed up to this, and all 8 people that took the time to come and say they're against this, like,
Right, and
I have to assume
right,
that,
but it didn't even get to a board. It wasn't even elected. It's just like you just basically they realistically, if you want to get down to the brass tacks of it, is Dominion decided it wasn't worth the headache and cost of the potential litigation that was already being thrown about. They were talking about lawsuits for this, that, and the other.
what?
They were alleging and they were threatening lawsuits against this development.
What kind of lawsuits?
I don't know.
Okay, well, I didn't know if you knew.
I don't quite understand that part of it, but Dominion and their legal team, I'm sure, had some conversations. And yeah, we could probably beat these lawsuits, but it's going to
It's going to cost us, right?
We're going to have to spend it. It's going to delay the project. It's going to delay this. It's going to cost us legal fees. It's going to cost us that. So yes, we can go ahead with this, but it's going to cost this much more. And you're already doing an affordable housing project, so it's not a high profit rearing enterprise anyway. And you're dependent on a couple of other parts and pieces in place to make it affordable. That's out the window. You're going to end up spending all that in legal fees, so it's not worth it.
Yeah.
And so they just walked away.
I mean, from our perspective, it does sound like fucking asinine.
It's bullshit.
Because, I mean, it was, I could be wrong, but I mean, it was promoted as a community geared towards those making $70,000
right.
or less.
Right.
Which, I mean, it's not like we're asking, like, hey, here's for $10,000 or less. Like, we're trying to bring in, like, the poorest of the poor, and they're like, we can't have this shit happen. Like,
but it's like...
And even then, like, I don't understand how
the only legitimate legal complaints that you could actually put in play as a neighborhood around it is...
I don't see how it would devalue their property value by having
apparently
an apartment complex with amenities next to it. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, well, if you have apartments next to your house, like, your house isn't worth as much anymore.
Apparently, the research that's out there on the topic is mixed. So if you want to make the argument, you can find research that supports your side of that argument. Like true research that says if a development like this comes in within
so you're saying you could find that evidence both ways.
Yes, absolutely.
As far as examples to where this has happened both ways.
Right. Different groups have done different studies on it, and
where you actually blame that.
Studies. Right. You can say this $500,000 or this $10 million 550 unit whatever came in, and the aggregate home values only went up 5%, where in other communities similar. All the comps in the area went up 10% in the same time period. So yes, it didn't subtract from home values, but they didn't raise as fast as other ones in similar situations without said development going into place. Or there's no market difference between this home near this development and this other home over here who isn't. It's just the data doesn't say anything.
Right.
Or I guess the data says everything, and you just have to pick the data you want to go and make your point.
Yeah,
exactly. But the only real logical legal-ish argument is we don't have the infrastructure in place, and stormwater issues, which is everywhere. All of Knox County has that issue, no matter where you put anything.
I mean, I'll say right now, I'm 98% sure that whatever land that they were talking about doing something on will have something done on it.
Right, just not for poor people. And apparently Andrew Davis, I might be conflating names now. Not Andrew Davis from the city or from Mayor Jacobs.
I may just want to keep up with it just to throw this shit in those fucking assholes' face.
My brother's one of them, and so is.
Well, no, he's not one of the ones that has.
I don't know if he is
protested
or not,
against this.
I don't know that. I don't know A from B on that one from his side of it. Todd Helton lives over there too, by the way.
Don't give a fuck.
I don't care either.
I don't give a fuck who lives there. I give a fuck about people that want to live there.
Because apparently, and again, let me back up for a second and apologize and correct earlier. Andrew Davis is not. There's another something Davis that was the advisor to Mayor Jacobs. Andrew Davis is a developer that runs around town. That's got some shit with Kyle Ward. That's a whole separate thing. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Andrew Davis apparently had gone to planning commission with a plan for the same piece of property that's almost identical, but it was market rate housing, and there was no objections. Now, for whatever reason, he decided not to go ahead and do it, and that's how we got to where we are. But no, I mean, there's no the evidence says that this was about poor people. Period. This is about people that don't make $150,000 plus a year, living in their neighborhood. That's the long and short of it. Because again, like I said, not many years ago, a different developer was looking at the same exact project, but was going to charge market rate instead of making it affordable. And
doing an apartment complex.
This is townhouses. It's a series of townhouses. That's what the current. That's
what
the current one is,
right,
and what the old one was.
Yeah.
So for all intents and purposes, since we use that word correctly now, the same exact thing was going in 5 years ago, and there was no objection. The only difference 5 years ago was it was market rate, and now it's Section 8. And so I don't know how to take this evidence any other way than you hate poor people. You don't want poor people in your neighborhood.
So the apartment complex was going to allow Section 8? Because what I heard, like, this was geared towards people making $70,000 or less.
Yeah, but there's some sort of...
I don't see those qualifying for Section 8 if you can afford...
I don't know exactly what it was, but there's some qualifying program.
Right.
It's not... It wasn't that they were going to do something... Like, you couldn't, like...
Well, I guess...
My understanding...
A lot of apartment complexes can, quote-unquote, accept...
Right. A voucher, essentially.
Right.
And so, right, but to get the voucher, you have to qualify, but that's through like KCDC or one of those groups,
right,
that issues the voucher. And that was my assumption on this one too. Is there was some system like that the Dominion, as far as their management team, they weren't the ones that were actually going through the process of, are you eligible to live here or not? Are you eligible for the discounted rates? I think that was, I don't know. That's a little subset that I don't quite understand. Yeah. Of which both arguments are made.
Sometimes in that development, you essentially kind of like promise someone that, we'll accept 10% of residents with vouchers or whatever.
Right. And which again, I don't know the details on how that broke down completely inside this plan. But at the meeting when people were complaining about it, and the most ridiculous out of both sides of your mouth argument you could ever make of, we don't have the infrastructure, we can't handle the traffic, there's no buses out there, so these people can't afford cars.
All right.
So how are they supposed to get to work if they can't get on a bus and they can't afford a car, but we have too much traffic and they'll add more traffic? It's like, well, which one? They both can't be true at the same time.
Right.
Either they can't drive.
You can't expect to move into a place without a vehicle.
Right. And again, that's everywhere in the county. Any neighborhood in the county has the same argument. Every neighborhood in the county doesn't have the same finances to pitch a fit about it as Choteau does. Apparently, Choteau has surpassed Farragut in average home values and income.
Cool.
And it's the second fastest growing sub-community in Knox County after Hardin Valley. It's had the most development recently because it had space still. Really,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that they were. A, people want to be out there, but B, because there's space to put stuff.
I don't know if people really want to be out there, but I mean, they do have the space. And probably at the time, it was a little bit cheaper until
and it was kind of nice because you were kind of out there. It was kind of out there with space. And I mean, I kind of get the argument, but I don't know. That's one of those I struggle with, and it goes back to the root cause of all my issues. But if you want to be out and not have a neighbor close by, then buy the land. If you want to be out and live a rural lifestyle, go to a rural place. Knox County's not rural.
Right.
Very, very tiny section of northeast Knox County would still be considered rural.
Right.
And that ain't going to last very long. So if you want rural, you don't live in Knox County.
People want the essence of it. I want to live in a subdivision that feels rural.
Right, but I want the convenience of the
I want my
town.
house to be 5 feet from my next door neighbor, but I want to feel like I'm in the woods.
Right.
I'm out in the country.
And so
you don't know what the fuck you want.
If you lived in Choteau for 20 years and you had the house that was in the middle of the big ass farm, and you had no neighbors within 1,000 feet of your front door, and they're building something right next door to you, well, you have the space. But if you sold your farmland to a developer, go fuck yourself.
And that's the crazy point. I think that there's been more so the comments of you're going to devalue, or we want our property value increased. But at the same time, you ask some of these people in your instance that have been out in that property and own a good chunk of land, and all of a sudden that their property value is going up, and they may not see that as a plus side. They see that as a downside because all of a sudden that property value goes up.
Right. They want to stay, and they can't afford their taxes anymore.
Exactly.
Which in Knox County, that's a shit argument too. Because if you can't afford your property taxes in Knox County, you're real poor. Because your property tax ain't shit.
Well, no, I mean, like, there was that farm right there at Cedar Bluff and Kingston Pike. I would imagine over the past, like, 10, 15 years, it's probably gone up, like, 300%.
Oh, easy. Like right there by the Home Depot and shit?
Yeah, around
across
that area.
Across the street, across Kingston Pike from the Home Depot?
Yeah. That I'm sure at one point was probably still considered agricultural.
Oh, sure. And
I don't know if, I mean,
there were horses out there when we were in high school.
I think that was somebody's property that had horses.
Yeah.
But I mean, right there.
We had a dude we went to high school with that lived in one of those houses.
Right.
One of those, like right there on that set.
Right.
So I remember he drove like an old fucking 2-door Lincoln that was like 35 feet long.
Wow.
And that's the only reason I knew he lived there because I happened to go to Home Depot or something for some reason, and I saw that car. It's like that's even in the 90s that car wasn't around.
But no, like even in the 90s, like a couple of those fields, like you still had hay that was like rolled up in like the big round bales.
Sure.
That I'm assuming they did so just to kind of confer that this was still quote unquote agricultural land.
Oh, I don't know.
Which was a lower taxed property value.
Right, probably. I don't know. That's
just because probably they knew that. Hey,
I mean, like I get the idea. Like
hey, we're on the edge of this being zoned commercial. Like, we need to keep this agricultural. Like, yeah, we're still cutting this hay and we're still rolling up this hay.
See, I don't know. It depends what and you're not wrong, but it depends what your goal is as the owner. If your goal is to stay there and keep farming, then sure. But like, to what end is the question? Because if you have
there was one or two small little houses that were back in there.
They're still in there. There's still a couple of them.
Are they still there?
Like right across from the Home Depot, the Home Depot that has the light on in Kingston Pike, you can still go straight. It's like an old school neighborhood, like an old neighborhood. And there's a house right there on the corner that's probably on 1.5 acres.
Right. I'm talking about the opposite side of the road. Essentially where, I guess, basically where that Kroger is now.
Oh, those two. Okay, yeah. But again, if you own that land and you're faux farming on it,
like there was a house like in that
right,
area.
right, because it was buried in the trees.
Right.
Like, I remember like you couldn't see the house except like when you were in that one spot, you could see down the driveway, you could see the house.
Yeah.
But there was tree lined all the way down the driveway, and then around the house there was like just a pocket of trees, and then it was all fields.
Yeah.
Around it. Yeah. Okay, I know what you're talking about. Sorry, I was mixing up what you're talking about. But again, as the homeowner, you have some problems, obviously, because the city's growing up around you, and you didn't necessarily want that. But you want it zoned commercial if you're wanting to sell it, because you get you have better value in commercial sales than you do in residential sales.
Right, but that may not have been their intent.
Sure, and then you do all you can to keep it agricultural and to pay the lower tax rate, even though the tax rate's going up on you.
Right.
But I don't know, it's a chicken or the egg, I guess. At some point, the development's going to creep in whether you like it or not. And at some point, you're going to have to sell to pay the bills if you can't afford to pay the bills. Yeah,
I guess I wonder how much like they
they
had to say whether as far as like what gets zoned.
I mean,
as far as like all of a sudden the city's just like, no, I'm sorry, you keep saying this is agricultural. I know you own this land, but
I would think that as long as you don't change the function of what you're doing, which was nothing essentially as far as I could tell,
it can't be rezoned.
It can be rezoned, but you're grandfathered until a sale, and so it is zoned. So if it's zoned agricultural and you live there and own it, it's as long as you are the owner, it stays agricultural. But if it's rezoned into commercial, you get to still function with it as whatever it was until you sell it. And so you can't sell it as agricultural; you have to sell it as commercial because that's the new zoning. As soon as you sell it,
man, it's a weird like little interim designation process.
I mean, it's not. It's just like it's like that happens all over the place. There's so many it's like grandfather on historic buildings. Like what should have been good for us on our stupid front door story that I keep bitching about on the tavern place.
All right.
Like it's a historical building. It's under the historical overlay. Even though codes are X, Y, and Z for all of the city, it has the exemption because of the age of the building and the desire for the city to keep those older storefronts in the same format.
Right. So when does that grandfathered end?
I guess theoretically it ended. I don't know. Well, historical is a little bit different because the building's historical. It doesn't matter who the owner is. But theoretically, when the owner changed is when some of the zoning would have changed. Some of the grandfather exemptions come off because it's like,
oh, you just bought this one. Now you have to get it up to code.
Right. But I think the seller is obligated to advise. And I think a good buyer on commercial property is going to know stuff like that going into it.
Did you?
I don't know. I didn't buy the building. We're just leasing it.
Oh, gotcha.
But again, for my argument, that's a historical overlay. It has nothing to do with ownerships or ownership changes. But alas, we're open. Business is going.
Damn.
Not as awesome as I was hoping. But hey, on Thursday, everybody, if you want to come out, we're actually going to do the Compass Cocktail Hour thing, I think.
It's been rescheduled?
Yeah, we rescheduled for next Thursday, the 21st, 5 to 7.
Nice.
Come have some drinks, and then you can meet me and Scott and Jesse, and we'll be doing their podcast, not mine.
Please come out.
Yeah, come check it out. It's fun. It'll be a fun time. Q&A section. We have a couple of different wink and nods. We're not saying who, but they're going to try and maybe do an interview segment, a live interview with a hot and happening politico around town.
Nice.
Maybe we'll get maybe we can get somebody to come on and announce their intent to seek a certain office in the future. I don't know.
That could be good.
Could be fun. You could be part of breaking news, people. Come check it out. Where did we start on that? Oh, the Chodo thing. So anyway, the residents of Chodo that are involved in this organization that pitched a fit, you guys suck. Or maybe not. Maybe this conversation that is so stupid that we can't have them, whether we actually want growth or not, needs to actually fucking happen. Because Mary Jacobs found himself in a little bit of a bind because the Dominion Group had to apply for some sort of grant or something from the federal government, and Mr. Jacobs had penned a letter supporting them and telling them that they're a great company and they're going to do a great job and they should be getting this grant for this thing. And so
he was supportive of it.
So he was supportive of the project. And then there was some cope on there.
I guess the question is, who was he placating when he said that? And will he go back to try to placate others?
Well, the cope that's happened from his communications team was that it's kind of a rubber stamp that he does. Any developer that comes to him and asks for a letter of recommendation for the U.S. Department of Housing or whatever it is, he will write that letter almost every time, no matter who it is.
Yeah.
Because he wants to support, if it's a local developer, he wants to support a local developer.
Right.
And so they're trying to
I was wondering how he was going to
specifically
play both sides of that.
So yeah. So I don't know. Chodo sucks. But on the other Andrew Davis or whatever, I'm conflating all sorts of Davis names. Developer thing, who was a previous attempted development on this Chodo property. There was an ethics complaint on Kyle Ward for taking. Essentially, it's a bribe complaint. It's a citizen whom I don't remember the name of the neighborhood, but whatever this developer Davis character, at least on paper, sold 2 properties in a neighborhood to Kyle Ward for $10.
Oh, what?
Now, as Scott explained it earlier today, that's not accurate at all.
I was about to say, there has to be a paper trail of this.
And so it's a quick claim deed. Quick claim, is that what it's called?
I'm not in the know, but I've heard that term before.
The quick claim deed processes is you have to put a figure on it. It's the same thing like when you title your car, right? When you sell your car and you give the person you sold the car to your title and you write the number you sold it in there as.
Right.
Often and fairly normally, people will put a very small value in there because the arrangement agreement's a whole other thing. It just changes it changes the title ownership quickly so that the buyer can start doing what they're trying to do sooner. The seller can get it off their books, whatever it is. It's just a process. And so on paper, at least, it looks like a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. And that bothers people. Rightfully so, at least visually speaking. And so it was a fun lesson in how the fuck ethics complaints work in the city or county county elected officials, because the long and short of it is, even if Mr. Davis sold these two properties for only $10 or $10 a piece or whatever it was, there's no crime. There's no ethics violation on Kyle Ward for buying them for such a low value, even though that's quote unquote under what they're valued at. Because by law, there has to be a direct line of a gift, whatever, to a vote.
All right.
You can't just say
he gave this person a deal, basically.
Right. So that's the problem on the front end.
Trying to prove that it was in an effort to solely garner votes.
Right. And so the ethics complaint kind of fell flat on its face, but apparently there was some shit behind the scenes. That it was like a $40,000 transaction, and there's some liens on the property that Ward has to pay off on the other side now that he owns it. And apparently, if you go look at the properties, they're by definition undevelopable. So this all came about because Ward was at a planning commission meeting as a developer, asking for exemptions for these two properties that he now owns.
Yeah.
Because for him to put anything on him, he has to get exemptions because there's like a hillside or a ditch or something off the back of the property, and you can't build anything on it with, like, I think the county's like 20 feet, 22 feet from the road. You have to set back off the road like 20 feet, 22 feet or something like that, to build a structure on a property.
Okay.
And you couldn't put a structure in without it falling into the ditch at 22 feet. And so he'd asked the planning commission to give him an exemption so he could do like 15 feet or something like that.
Yeah.
So he could move it a little bit closer because the back of the property just doesn't allow it. And so whomever, well, actually it's a neighbor who lives in the neighborhood who doesn't want these properties developed. He likes the empty lots. He prefers the empty lots because the kids playing them or something. I don't know. Just doesn't want them developed. And so he filed the ethics complaint to what appears to be, I mean, there are some questions. Like it smells funky. Don't get me wrong. But because the agreement as it was explained by Kyle Ward or by somebody on Kyle's behalf, I can't remember what it was. But the agreement that he had with the guy he bought the property from was quick claim deed to me. I'll give you $10 transfer. They don't actually give an exchange that money. It's just basically the previous owner is giving Kyle the property. Kyle's going to develop the property and sell it. And at the point that Kyle sells it, he owes $40,000 per property to the previous owner.
Wait, how so?
That's the agreement. That's the contract he has between him and the previous owner. Right? And so, okay, so let's try to simplify the example. That got a little wonky. So you own a piece of land, and I want to build something on your piece of land. I don't have the cash to buy that piece of land. I have enough cash to build something on it, but not buy it and build something on it. Hey, man, give me that piece of land. I'm going to build this thing on it, and then I'm going to sell it for $200,000. I'll give you $50,000. And you're like, cool. And I say, well,
but I still own it while you're building it.
No, I own it, but I have a contract with you that says when I sell it, I owe you $50,000. You give it to me for free on the promise that I will pay you $50,000 as soon as I sell it after I do what I'm going to do with it.
Is this normal?
It's not uncommon, apparently.
Okay.
It's usually from, and so the real stinky part to me is that Kyle Ward's a developer now. He was an entrepreneur. He has his, apparently he and his, I should have gone back and listened, I guess. I know when I had him on, he had mentioned that they had some rental properties that he and his wife had done together before they had kids, but that they'd sold a couple of them.
Yeah.
And that's how he bought, or that's how he started the Ward Waste Systems or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I guess property management developing isn't completely outside his realm of expertise.
Yeah.
As I recall, he had not been doing it recently, and this is his jump back in.
Right. Now, I don't want to get on a tangent, but I mean that's kind of like one thing that I've kind of talked about previously, of kind of like that glass ceiling of you get to a certain economical standpoint to where you can do this. You can essentially buy properties and rent them out and be able to further your income.
Right.
Just based upon like you were at that financial level.
Right. You have the ability to lose and not die.
No, not lose and not die, but you have the ability to financially purchase these excess properties to then venture off into making property.
Right. There is a
That
point.
rarely are you at a loss, so don't try to frame it in you're making a risk at buying this property.
I think the best I've seen out there was a meme on this was success is like a carnival game. The rich kids can play it more. So being successful at a project is like a carnival game. A lot of people will go up to the carnival game, play the carnival game. People that have the skill to do it, like the throw the ball and knock the pins down thing. They're all scams at some level.
I was about to say, I was like, it's 99% a scam.
But I think the point of the idea is that they're really hard to beat, but you can beat them. Sometimes it's skill based, sometimes it's luck, sometimes it's a little bit of both. But success is like carnival games in the sense that the rich kid can play the carnival game 20 times until he hits one that wins, where the poor kid only gets one swing before he might be out of the game.
Okay. You're equating a carnival game which has a very low level of reward versus commercial property, which generally only has an upside.
Okay.
Correct?
No.
Am I wrong in having that general
if you want
idea?
if you want to go ahead and develop a property, there's risk. There's risk that you like. At the end of the day, you like. Okay, so if we're going to stick with the word example, he's obligated to pay the guy.
Well, I guess not commercial, but residential. Sorry,
whatever. It doesn't matter. Property period. But the guy, he's obligated to pay this guy $40,000 when he sells the property. So let's say he doesn't get his.
Right, but he would never offer that unless he knew that he would make a substantial profit upon doing this. So
if he gets it all done, so not.
Is that written into the contract that like, hey, I'm not going to buy this from you, but I want to develop it, and only if I develop this enough to make property.
That's the point. And again, I haven't seen the contract on this. My point is that Ward's risk in this is that he owes the $40,000 when he sells it, no matter what he does with it. If he doesn't develop it because the commission doesn't give him an exemption to build the house a little bit closer to the street than coding allows, or whatever, and I guess I don't know if there's a time frame on it. Like he could sit on it for 10 years. I don't know that part of it, but at some point he's going to do something with that property, and it may be he just wants to cut his losses and get out of there and just sell it for, he'll sell it for $35,000. But then he owes this guy $40,000 on the other side. Unlikely he'd sell it for a loss. Theoretically, he should be able to sell it for 40 or 50 and at least break even on the process. Like, probably. But if he's gone through it 1,000 times and gone to commission and asked for, gone to planning commission and asked for exemption and asked for this and can't get it done, any future developer is going to see the same thing and go, well, I'm not going to buy this piece of property because I can't build anything on it because the guy that owns it before me kept trying to do it, or I'm going to pay way less than market because I'm going to have to be a little bit more creative with what I'm doing on it. So at the end of the day, there is a risk here for Kyle.
How much?
$40,000 apparently.
Likelihood of risk.
I don't know. I don't know how planning commission is going to play it.
I'd say it's very low likelihood.
I'd say it's pretty low.
Okay.
I agree that it's pretty low.
Okay.
I think you're missing the point of the carnival game story, but okay.
I think that's totally irrelevant from a fucking real estate
No,
deal.
I think it's actually...
I don't know how you want to... No. It's not at all. How is a real estate...
Your point when you started this...
No.
When you went on your tangent, when you said, I might go on a little bit of a tangent here, and you were talking about when people get to a certain level... Right? That they can then exponentially make more money because they can spend their money and use their money in all these different ways to make more money.
Yeah.
That's what you were going for, right?
Kind of, yeah.
And so that's the point of the carnival game thing is that
No, that has nothing to do with fucking carnival game. Carnival game
it's a fucking analogy.
Is a 1% chance.
Fucking paying $2.
Well, then don't make it a fucking simile. You were trying to equate as one and the same.
It's an analogy. That's a specific difference in
analogy.
phrasing. But
My apologies.
Okay, if you
were trying to equate the two, and I'm saying those are two very different, distinct examples of risk reward.
Okay.
Am I wrong?
I mean, yes, you were correct in the sense that the risk, there is a lower risk for reward on this one adventure than the equivalent of one round of said carnival game.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, then explain to me how you are equating the two as similar.
The idea is that he could take the risk, even if it's smaller than the carnival game, multiple times, and only has to hit once to win the prize. Because he can afford to lose 3 or 4 times. I was trying to agree with you, actually. I was trying to support your point of when you get to a level, you can take the risk and get away with it. Where other people can only take the risk once, and if they fail on the first try, they're fucked.
Right.
And there's no chance they're ever going to get to take the risk again.
I can concede your attempt, but I would counter with these are very highly, distinctly different risk-reward ratios.
I get it. I don't think so. To a guy like Kyle Ward, who's not uber wealthy, but he's got a decent amount of money, the risk of losing 40 grand isn't nothing, but it's sustainable for him. He could lose it and he'll survive. Now, some other dude on the street who has 50 grand to his name total.
The likelihood of him losing in a real estate deal versus a carnival game
is less than the carnival game. You're right.
How much? I mean,
I don't fucking know. It doesn't fucking matter. This is what I get for trying to support your ideas instead of attacking them.
I'm sorry. You just got. I'm not trying to give you.
I thought it was a good analogy for the grand scheme of entrepreneurship and stuff like that. In the sense that a fucking douche canoe like Trump can have more chances to play fucking games and win or lose on those games and become a billionaire because he's got daddy's money to lose and he doesn't go fucking broke and die in the process. And you know me, and I'm the free market fucking guy that doesn't give a shit if daddy gave him the money or not. He went out and made the money his own way. And I'm trying to give a fucking fig leaf of the system's not super awesome for people that don't have things to start with. I'm trying to agree with you on that. And instead you're making it about, well, you're going to win 99% of the time with fucking property. You're only going to win 1% of the time in a fucking carnival game. I'm trying but
sorry.
The point is that you can afford to lose the carnival game. If you can't afford to lose the carnival game, you can't afford to play the big kid games either. That's the point I'm trying to make. It's the people that can afford to lose that win most.
I'm sorry. I appreciate the attempt at a fig leaf, but I will stick to my argument that those scenarios.
Again, this is off your tangent that's talking about when you hit a level, right? That's what your tangent was. When you hit a level, these opportunities to make money come out that normal people don't get their option of. Right. Because when you hit a level, you can play the carnival game 50 times. Where when you don't hit that level yet, you can only play it once. Look, I adjusted my own analogy to make it even fucking more supportive of your point, and you're going to tell me I'm wrong again.
No, yes. You're still equating a carnival game to the prospect of making a commercial property purchase, which are, I'm sorry, the odds are not equivalent. So I'm going to continually push back upon the
okay, you're right.
Equality of the two.
You were correct. The odds of winning are not the same.
But you were steadfast and trying to say that, like,
it's not the point.
I'm trying to help you out and trying to give a good example.
The point of the analogy is not about the odds of winning. The point of the analogy is about the ability to play the game and deal with a loss. That's the point of the analogy. The point of the analogy is that you can continue to play the game whether you win or lose. And that's why you have more chances to win.
But the odds of the game have more weight upon.
You're right. You're right. That's why we play blackjack, and you don't go play fucking slots because you have a better chance of winning blackjack.
Okay.
The odds of the game are better.
Right.
That's all that matters are the odds of the game. It's not your ability to play the game. It's not your ability to lose. It's your ability, or it's your odds of winning. That's all that matters. It's your odds of winning. That's what you're saying right now. That's all that matters in the argument is the odds of winning. Now, back to your point. Please make your point on what's important about when you hit a certain level, you can make more money off of other things. Because it's not about the risk, wasn't your point in the first place.
Well, that was my point. I did not mean to go off on a tangent. I just wanted to insert that little point into the analogy of
what's interesting to me and what
the property purchase versus just a gamble.
Right. What lends the ethics
more often than not, I'm sorry, property purchase is
It's not easy, and not a lot of people could do it. When you get to the place where you could do it, you're
Right,
in a good
but
place and you can make money.
But you've said many a times, like, property's the one thing. Like, there is a finite value or a finite
volume
of.
Correct. Okay, so back to the original thing. The thing that says to me that there's a real ethics issue here is Ward announced that he wasn't running again. So that lends to it not being an ethics issue because this isn't a person trying to buy him for future votes because he's on his way out.
He just wants more trash customers.
For himself. But what lends to it being an ethics problem to me is that his reason for not running again was he needed to focus on his business, and at the time that was just Ward Waste Solutions,
right,
and his family because he just had a kid.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, you're stepping out of this role to focus on your business and your kids, and you're adding a new business venture shortly after. It seems like a crime of opportunity to me. The opportunity to, but whatever the reason was that Davis brought this property to his attention,
that lends more to my.
I'm agreeing with the ethics issue. I think there's grounds for this ethics question. Now, by the rules of the ethics committee and whatnot, I don't know how you apply it.
Well, no, I mean, as far as like the glass ceiling, as far as like you get to a certain level that you're then able to venture out into.
Right. Right. And
profit there.
And the argument, the real argument at play is whether his position as a commissioner got him opportunities they wouldn't have gotten otherwise.
Right.
And that's the real ethics question at play.
Yeah, it's very possible. I mean, he could have made connections within.
Sure, and it could be just simple networking, and that's not a crime ethically, I guess.
Exactly.
But it does run up some red flags.
Right.
And I can understand questions.
It's not provable.
Right.
It's all just speculation, hearsay.
Right. And more importantly, if you're going to do it, like if it's truly some fucking bribery kind of game, you're going to be a little bit more. Right. You're not going to just throw a quick claim deed out with a $10 bill on it and think that nobody's going to notice.
Right. Yeah. You don't put that out in public notice. Exactly.
But apparently, some of the commissioners that are on the ethics board here in Knox County are also developers, and they're like, "No, this is a normal thing. We do this shit all the time."
Yeah.
And so, I don't know.
Right.
And the funniest one from the complainant.
I mean, like, most people are smart enough to know that they're not going to do something stupid.
Right. If you're going to be super obvious about it, you have to be Trump to get away with it. Yeah, good joke. Anyway. Well, the funny thing is the complainant followed the ethics complaint with asking Garrett Holt, who was one of the ethics board members, to recuse himself because Kyle Ward appointed it. Well, the ethics board is 9 members. Each commissioner appoints one. Like their district, they come out of their own district. Like that's the structure. So, and so the real question at play is, like, do we want our elected officials to not have any personal business? Period. And that's really what this guy's complaint is. You're not allowed to have personal business.
Right.
And that's just not going to fly. Because it's like, well, like Randy Burleson. What does Randy Burleson do? Donates a lot of money to a lot of campaigns. What do people do? They eat food. What does Randy Burleson do for his business? He sells food. Are you not allowed to eat at a Randy Burleson restaurant if you're a commissioner because this is some cyclical game that you're playing with somebody who gave you a donation? Is this a quid pro quo, as they say? It's a perfect phone call.
I can agree with the complexity of it.
Like it smells fishy. Don't get me wrong. Like, this thing smells fishy. But I think on the legal standard, I don't think it reaches the legal standard for it. I think it's a pissed off neighbor.
I would assume that it's Mr. Ward essentially going right up to the line of what's acceptable. Essentially, it's not technically illegal. I'm doing something that's not quite semi-frowned upon, but it's not legal. It's not something I can get prosecuted for, but it's something I will profit off of, and
I will take
semi-above board.
I will take the other side of the argument is I got on commission. I was doing my job, meeting people. That's part of the job. One of the people I met, who's a developer who I had to take votes on and talk about projects he was working with on. I had mentioned some desire to get into development or to do some rental properties because that's something that my wife and I used to do before I got into this. And, I'm getting out of commission. I don't want to do this commission thing anymore. And he happened to mention to me that he had a couple properties that he was off his calendar of things that he wanted to do. So I took him. So I took him up on the offer. Or maybe
It's
Kyle,
a lot of speculation.
Or maybe Kyle approached him and said, "Hey, you got any properties that you're not doing anything with that you maybe want to get off your books? I'm interested in buying some properties to do some work on." And Mr. Davis or whomever it was said, "Yeah, I got these couple over in this neighborhood that they're kind of funky. They got a ditch, and I don't want to deal with all the bullshit that I have to do to get it property on it. If you want to take those, and we can work out some pricing, and we'll go from there."
Yeah,
it's perfectly reasonable either way. Like, I mean, they're human beings. They get paid near nothing to do this commission job. They have to have work. I don't know. It's like I said, it's fishy. I don't know that. I guess my argument is you'd have to bring me some strong evidence to say that it's like intentionally, knowledgeably right up to the line of whether this is an ethics violation.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Right.
I think he was smart enough to have this as close to.
Well, see, what you're saying right now infers to me that he knew it was questionable. I'm thinking that he just thought. I'm thinking that he was like. I'm thinking that he's thought it was an opportunity that he should go after, and maybe he asked some questions to make sure he wasn't crossing some line. And when he was told he wasn't, he went ahead with it. That's my guess on it.
That's right. I'm not trying to allude that he was doing anything malicious.
Right. Okay.
I'm saying like he obviously had, probably had advisors that he's like, hey, if you do this, like,
I mean, he might have a lawyer friend or something.
Good.
I mean, he has access to county legal, and he could ask county legal about it before he did it, which I think he probably did. Just to make sure, I want to make sure this is above board or whatever. All right,
I'm sure he has. Okay, sorry. Yeah,
what do you mean? Okay, no. What do you?
I was gonna say, I'm sure he has some kind of like right hand, like legal advisor.
No,
you don't think so?
I mean, maybe a buddy. It's not like a paid position in his office or anything like that. Maybe his lawyer for the maybe his retained lawyer for the waste management company. He said, "Hey, can you look into this for me? Make sure I'm not doing anything wrong."
Yeah,
he might have had somebody he could ask about it, but it's not like they don't have that. County commission. As a commissioner, you can go to the county law department and ask them questions about things. You could ask other commissioners, former commissioners that you might know from the process.
Right.
Maybe ask your somebody that's in the the what's his name was a lawyer who was the former chair of the GOP. You could ask him as a lawyer, be like, hey man, just where am I at on this? Do you see anything on this that's problematic?
All right.
I mean, it's not like a Senate seat where you have a whole staff of people that work for you.
All right. But I'm sure he, before going into this, I don't think he went blindly into the real estate venture.
Well, I think that's what I said.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm sure he has people before. He can talk to.
Yeah, but on an investment kind of level, but not on a government interaction ethics kind of level. He doesn't have somebody. Because, like I said, I think he told me that he'd done it before.
They're not too dissimilar. I mean, because one is going to have the ability to operate within the realm of both.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll try to call him. He doesn't answer my phone calls anymore. So, he's too busy with his family and kids and commission.
Don't blame him.
And development opportunities.
Don't blame him.
I mean, I do. He's my commissioner. It's not like I'm calling Gwen McKenzie.
Reach out like multiple times.
Yeah. I mean, I am his constituent. I feel like I should at least get an answer.
Right.
Eventually. But anyway.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Did you see the emergency management? We have the Knox County emergency management thing had to kick in.
Did. It was something crazy. I didn't realize was a thing that like.
I didn't know we had it either. I didn't know we had a county emergency management program thing.
Right. It was only operational, I guess, for a handful of hours.
A couple hours, yeah. All right. So, quick backstory, as I understand it, is it was like Wednesday.
Yeah, and I saw a wreck like right before, right before the one on Ebenezer.
So
I drove by a wreck like right before that.
I don't remember the day of the week it was, but we'll say Wednesday for the sake of conversation. Wednesday.
That was Wednesday.
A bunch of people were getting hurt real bad and calling ambulances, and AMR Ambulance Services ran out of ambulances.
No, that was Tuesday, I believe, that it happened, which I drove by, which I believe was an accident. Or actually, I had to turn around on Nubbins Ridge and go back a different way.
Okay.
Which it pissed me off because there was already a fire truck there and at least 1 or 2 cruisers there. I turned around, started going back the opposite direction on Evans Ridge. Like 5 fucking cruisers go by, a fire truck goes by, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, the road is shut down. Like, how many more people do you need responding to this?
That is one of the weird isms. Well, the one that they didn't have was an ambulance, apparently. So anyway, whatever day of the week it was, a bunch of people were getting in wrecks or having heart attacks or whatever, and like AMR, who has the contract with Knox County, only has a certain number of ambulances on the road in a given time period. And so the Knox County Emergency Services FEMA thingy, whatever it's called, kicked into gear and brought in some ambulances from neighboring counties or neighboring companies, or maybe Rural Metro stepped in. I don't know exactly how the whole bucket. I don't know what actually functionally happened as far as that thing goes. And so essentially, like in the couple of different in the Compass story as well as the News Sentinel article I looked at on it, it's the ER's fault. Is what it sounded like to me. Is that
emergency room?
Yeah. Is that so in policy? And I don't know again who and how this is set up exactly.
What? They didn't have the ambulances to respond to incidences, and it's the emergency rooms department problem.
Yes. Can I finish what I was going? Because I was
sorry.
I was literally going to answer the question you're asking right now.
My bad.
Okay, so it is the policy, and I don't know exactly how this policy and whose policy it is between the hospitals and the ambulance services, that the ambulance cannot leave until that patient is taken in. And so basically there's a cone of responsibility on a patient, right? So you wreck your car on the side of the road, you get hurt real bad, the ambulance comes to get you, you are now in their cone. They transfer you to the hospital. They are still in the ambulance's cone until the hospital takes it from them. And so it has become a norm that these ambulances are at the hospital with the patient, waiting for the hospital to take that patient off them. They can't get back out on the street until the ER takes them. And so if the ER is backed up 30 minutes, and this isn't like right now or this person's going to die,
right,
the hospital doesn't take them. And so you have a little old lady who had like a small heart attack, and she's, the ambulatory crew and the medic on the ambulance got them, what's the word? Stabilized. The ER, because they don't have anywhere to put the person and don't have staffing to handle the person being added to them, they will stay on the ambulance's gurney in the hallway or in the back of the truck or wherever the fuck they particularly are, until basically a nurse comes over and signs off and says, this is now our patient.
Yeah. I did see a response to it that AMR or somebody was going to, or Rural Metro was going to add more cots, which I thought was kind of odd, but I guess now in what you're talking about,
and so maybe
kind of making sense.
Maybe there's a landing zone in the hospitals where they could put multiple patients that haven't been accepted by the hospital yet, that the ambulatory service still has cone of coverage over, or whatever it's called, and get the truck back out. But at least as I understand it, it's that the truck can't leave until the hospital takes the patient. And so a number of the trucks were stuck at hospitals because the hospital wasn't taking patients, and that's that's the primary reason they didn't have enough trucks on the road. There's also more accidents than average, or more people were having ambulatory need than average.
Right.
And so there was an increase in demand, and the supply was shrunk because they were stuck at hospital.
Right, but it got so bad that we had to
we had to call in some extra trucks from neighboring counties.
We had to alert this emergency system that I guess oversees.
Right, which probably means that AMR gets more of their trucks on the road and gets paid extra.
Right, we're essentially in a crisis mode, to where they've had to activate, this crisis management as far as trying to differentiate rural metro versus AMR versus, actual Knox County.
Right, City of Knoxville. Knox County doesn't have ambulances. City of Knoxville does.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, I take that back. City of Knoxville has a contract with AMR, and Knox County has a contract with AMR.
Yeah.
As far as I know, there are no rural metro ambulances that operate in Knox County right now.
I could be wrong. Yeah, I thought I saw rural metro was ended up helping assist at some point.
Right. I think they have a contract as filler, and they come in.
Yeah.
And if you're a rural metro member and call an ambulance and call Rural Metro to bring you instead of calling 911. You can take a Rural Metro ambulance to the hospital.
I still want to know what the fuck these like first priority, like just Sprinter vans, like driving around.
Just another ambulatory company.
I'm assuming they're more just like quote unquote ambulatory like transportation services.
Yes, good question. I don't know.
Right.
But again, like I said, it sounds to me like it's a hospital issue. It was a demand issue. The demand was up, and so the normal number of trucks on the road was stretched. But then they were stuck. If they would have been able to get to the hospital, dump the patient, and get back on the road, we might not have had to go there. That was my summation of reading the two different stories I read on it.
Yeah.
And so, but which goes to a thing that's been talked about a lot. AC's told us about it on here. The situation with the hospital staffing is fucking crazy. Like, I had a couple come in the other day, and they were just kind of walking around, they had a drink or whatever, and I was talking to them or whatever. It was like, it was like, oh, we just moved to town temporarily. Just moved to town temporarily. Housing market, this town's fucking crazy. Rentals, crazy. Why would you move here temporarily? Like, oh, well, we're from California. She's a nurse. I'm just, I got a dude said he worked part-time remotely for whatever company he worked for in California, so it didn't matter to him where they were. And, she's making like 3 times as much. So she took a 3-month contract to come down here and work in one of the hospitals. This hospital nursing situation is fucking crazy to me.
Yeah.
Because you have nurses quitting to take travel jobs. And you're hiring travel nurses to cover them. Why didn't you just pay that nurse more so they didn't quit? And then you didn't have to pay for a travel nurse to come in. Like, I don't understand it.
It's a little bit of the chicken before the egg.
This has been a thing since early mid pandemic.
Right. The past 3 years.
And so 3 years.
I mean, I'm sure there's a number of people that just take advantage of it, but at the same time,
3 years in, you would think the hospitals would catch up and say, okay, you know what?
No, I mean, there just hasn't been that influx of, I guess, personnel, essentially, coming out of medical school.
But instead of losing what you have, yes, you're still short.
Right.
But instead of losing what you have, be like, hey, I will pay you. I don't know. You could travel and get paid twice as much you get paid right now. I'll pay you 170%. It won't be quite as much as that, but you don't have to travel. You don't have to rent a new place. You don't have to do all that other shit. Stay here and work for me.
That's it. It's more so.
It's cheaper.
Like our friend AC does. Continually works for the same, but at the same time is allowed to then go do these things.
I don't think so.
But they're happy to just still be able to have him on the roster.
He was supposed to come tonight, so we'll throw him under the bus for that. But the way he described it to me when we were talking about it one night was that they don't know that he's doing both. He's been with them long enough that he has schedule flexibility, and he gets basically to pick when he works.
All right.
And so he's giving him his schedule. He's getting this contract set up and working their schedules against each other. And so he'll work his required week here and then work what's considered a short week, travel, and just work 20 days straight.
All right.
And then when his contract expires and he doesn't go to the travel thing anymore, what would be his days off become his days off again. But right now, what I understand he's doing is he's taking his days off and traveling.
Right.
And that his current hospital doesn't know that. Or they do know it, but they can't really do anything about it.
And,
but they also can't work.
I would say there's at least
7 days a week.
A considerable amount of people that may or may not be doing the same thing.
I wouldn't say there's not zero. I would say there's more than zero. Yes, but like this, at least the inference I took, I didn't ask specifically, but it sounded to me like this lady had moved to Knoxville for 3 months because that's how long her contract with whatever hospital she came here to work for is.
Right.
That she wasn't flying back and forth between the two. That she's literally just coming here.
Yeah.
Because
we
she doesn't have a hospital. She doesn't work for a hospital. She just takes these contract jobs and travels around.
Right.
And makes a ton more money. Which again, what is that doing to me and you, the potential patient? How much more is our cost of getting service done because they're now paying nurses 3 times as much because they can't keep enough on staff because they're paying triple for travel nurses because they can't keep their own in. Because all their own are quitting because they're getting paid triple to go somewhere else too. Which is essentially means over the structure of this whole thing, you're just going to have triple pay for everybody.
Yeah.
Do we not? You don't think we're going to end up paying more for that?
No, we do.
Okay. I don't understand.
That's part of why healthcare costs have gone up.
I don't.
Amongst many other reasons.
Yeah, I agree. It's not exclusively this, but I don't understand. Like, I don't understand the business decision to continue to do this. Like, hey, this lady, like I said, this couple that I met, why don't you stay in Knoxville, and I'll pay you twice as much as you were making in California, but just stay here and work for us full time. Don't move back. Don't go take another contract somewhere else. Just stay here. You don't have to do all this moving shit. You do all the time. You can settle down and do all that kind of stuff. You're going to make way more money. You live in Tennessee instead of California. It's cheaper to live here. Blah, blah, blah. Just stay here. And then we don't. And then,
I mean, this couple said that they plan to continue living in California. They currently live there.
Yeah, no, they still have their place. They're keeping they're paying 2 rents. Or they're paying a mortgage and a rent or whatever it is. I think they said that they're renting out their place back in
I was about to say, I was like, they're probably renting that shit out.
Sure. But they're keeping it with intent to move back.
But that's not where they're living. And I don't. That's a whole like just transient lifestyle in itself,
right? Which I don't think most people like, and that's what I don't get. Like I think there's an economic advantage to say
exactly
to hit the middle ground.
They're doing it simply just for the money,
right? But there's an economic advantage to hit the middle ground to have a more satisfied employee. So for the hospitals, there's an economic advantage to play the game. Okay, let's play the game. I'm going to hit you somewhere in the middle of what you were making and what you're making now on travel stuff, but I'm going to give you the lifestyle of being able to settle down and get paid more than you would have got paid to settle where you were.
That's not what most businesses do.
I don't see why they wouldn't. That's what I don't understand. What do you mean that's not what both businesses do?
Why would they not? As a business, would you not prefer to pay an employee as low as amount as possible?
No. I don't pay anybody minimum wage.
I'm sorry, I'm not talking about minimum wage. Not necessarily a lower market value, essentially.
Sure, I would love to pay them as little as I had to. You're right. I would love to pay minimum wage, but the reality is I can't. And so the negotiation.
That's what most hospitals are looking at.
But they're not.
But they are.
They're not. How many nurses on staff at these hospitals are travel nurses that they're paying double or triple what they're paying their home nurses? Hit the middle, and you're paying less overall for labor and not having to go through the transition of having as many travel nurses all the fucking time. It's a win for everybody except for the people that want to travel all the time.
I would assume that people within that power that have that negotiation process have figured out economically that they can't just straight up offer those that are home-based to continually work there, that it's somehow more advantageous to allow said employees with time off to go off and do other things.
Okay, so yes, with our AC example of the psychopaths that are going to work 35, 40 fucking days straight, and somewhere in those days they're traveling from city to city to get from set of job A to set of job B because they're doing both jobs at the same time. They're not part of the conversation. They're not that can't be the majority. That's a fucking crazy lifestyle to live.
That's especially healthcare. If you want to look at like hospital healthcare versus just regular outpatient, whatever.
Okay.
Yay or nay?
Okay. Say it again. Say what you just said again. I did not understand what you said.
Basically, like the hospital situation that has been what it has been for the past 2 to 3 years, where there has been an influx of need of said nurses, physicians, assistants, etc., even just at the hospital level, not outpatient and doctor's offices, etc., as far as like a nursing shortage, that hospitals being able to operate as a hospital with an ER and the other programs that a hospital offers.
They're short-staffed.
Have been short-staffed.
So raise the pay.
And I'm assuming, again, like I was trying to say, that these hospitals have...
If you were doing that, if you were actually being market value on the game, you raise the pay, until people quitting and taking travel jobs.
I mean, I don't know if they're crossing their fingers and hoping that the things will get better, and then they'll only have to pay these traveling nurses an excessive amount of pay outside of normal.
That's the only thing that makes sense, is that they're betting that this thing stops.
Right.
That's the only thing that makes sense.
I can agree.
But it doesn't make sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense in the big picture. It doesn't make sense.
But at the same time,
in a very narrow-minded,
but at the same time,
minimalist
in current point, they can't just stop. They have to have staff there.
Right.
It's not something they can be like, hey, we just don't have the people. Go somewhere else.
And they should.
They have to still be able to operate as a hospital.
And they should be continuing to raise salaries until people stop quitting, or changing something else about the job until people stop quitting. Because people are quitting for a reason. It's either because they hate what they're fucking doing so much that the money isn't worth it. So either you make the money worth hating your life at work, or you make the job likable. And it doesn't sound to me like they're doing either of those, but they're paying way more to get psychopaths that like to travel from city A to city B and work 35, 40, 50 days in a row to do it.
At the same time, you're kind of framing is that if it's a wonderful, easygoing job. I mean, for some of these, you're dealing with some crazy fucking shit.
Sure, and make it worth it.
Obviously, we'll have a high turnover rate.
You have to make it worth it to stop, or to get more people to go through the process of becoming the capability of it.
I mean, for the most part, a lot of people in the medical industry are pretty well compensated.
Apparently,
comparatively to other markets,
right? Sure, compared to a guy at McDonald's, absolutely. I mean, it does. That's market at play. Is you have to pay enough when the job is shitty. So basically, the agreement here is that part of nursing is it's a shitty job. You got to watch people die. It's a shitty job. You have to pay people enough to do a shitty job. Do you think anybody wants to be a fucking maybe some fucking real psychopaths want to be a guard at a prison? Think that's a fun job that people enjoy doing? Because to me, if you enjoy being a prison guard, you're probably a fucking psychopath. You probably should be in prison, not working there. If you really enjoy that job. I love hanging out with convicts all day and they're keeping them from stabbing each other. It's awesome. I love going in every day, afraid that I'm going to die because I didn't do the one thing this one time and the fucking crazy guy stabbed me in the back of the head with his shit.
That's one viewpoint upon it, yes.
If the job sucks, like a garbage man. I mean, like HVAC, all these plumbing and all these trade jobs that we talk about all the time that have such high demand and that demand so much money. It sucks. It would suck to be it's getting better now. It's not as hot as it has been, but like a month ago, to be crawling around somebody's attic fixing some ductwork that fucked up because you're an HVAC guy,
right,
would be miserable.
Right.
And so you got to make the pay worth the misery. That's market labor conversation to me. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. And if you can't keep staff because the job is so miserable, you either figure out how to make the job less miserable. But if the misery is inherent in the job, then you have to make the pay commensurate to make it worth going through the misery.
I mean, I honestly think that a lot of hospitals are stuck in the clusterfuck of they were already at a need of doctors and nurses and et cetera. And then all of a sudden you have this need throughout the U.S. and you have separate hospitals that are like, hey, we're in this need.
I mean, I think,
and you have those that are like, "Hey,
I do think it was a
we're in that much in a need.
I do think it was
we will pay you that much more."
Like, once it started, I think it snowballed. Like, right. I think once it started, it snowballed, and then it became we have to offer more for this traveling nurse to come in because
and like you said,
more
because maybe we didn't have the availability here. We were looking for more people because we had our staff that said like, "Hey, I'm not available these days," and the hospital said, "Hey, we still need to be able to be a hospital even when you're off, so we're going to need people to be here when you're off."
Right, and I do think there's a problem in that the snowball is affected. And I don't know what the solution to that, but at some point,
right,
it's got to stop.
I think more so.
Run into
I think it's more so of the fact that there has been a lot of doctors in general have retired. I mean, we're running to a lot of set age group of the population. That are retiring and are just not being, those positions are not being refilled.
The way the U.S. system works especially is that the incentives to be a general practitioner Very low.
Right. But general practitioners are operating in hospitals and
in the ER.
The reference we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even talking about just in the ER. I mean, I know we talked about it with the ambulatory services, which kind of compounds out because you don't have doctors available to it. But
right,
I think I've got a cousin that works in the ER. I'll have to talk to her.
But yeah, again, the back to the core of the story. I think as we rambled on into the craziness of the nursing and all that kind of stuff, I think it's not to say that AMR didn't have their own issues in play at the time,
right?
But I think at least 50+% of the issue was the hospital staffing issues.
I mean, I would say also as a caveat that a lot of those companies operate like most companies do, like right there at the financial margin. Like, hey, on average, we only need 5 ambulatory services out and about.
I don't know the answer to this. I'm guessing, but I would assume that the contract with the county is specific. I would assume that there's a specificity to it that maybe you have to have a certain number of trucks on the road at
right, but they're going off of general averages.
But that's what. But they're bidding that contract when they ask for the contract from the county. They're offering X, and the county's saying yes or no to it. And so if that's the question on how many, if it's about AMR being cheap, that's the county's fault because they agreed to a contract to allow them to be that cheap. You know what I'm saying?
All right.
Because AMR says, okay, we looked at the data. All right, the data says that you need this, that, and the other. Game days we kick up to 10 trucks on the road because game days get crazy and all that kind of stuff. These events. So excluding like special event things that go on around the city where there's a higher need, on average we only need 4 trucks on the road all the time, and on Wednesdays we need 5, and on Sunday mornings we need 6. But outside of that, this is our and they probably have. I would assume that contract's pretty broken down in that sense. And so if it's a question of AMR having too few trucks on the road because of affordability's sake, that's a contract issue that the county allowed to happen, and that's the county's fault, not AMR's.
See, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't think the contract would be that specific. I think it's more like we contract you to provide these ambulatory services. And then it's up to AMR to then make sure that, I'm sure the city provides, data that on average, this time of year or football season on Saturday, like you're probably going to be responding to a lot of people like fucking drunk and throwing up. And, dehydration or whatever. I'm going to 100% disagree and say it's the other way. Say it's I would think that it's the ambulatory service using public records to present the data and saying this is how many trucks we see that you need on X, Y, and Z. And this is the contract. I guess it depends on how they pay them. I think part of the contract is response time, that they're required to respond within a certain amount of time. Yeah, I'd say that'd be being built.
But I also think that there's caveat in there. It's like, well, we can't respond if we don't have trucks on the road because our trucks are stuck at your hospital. And so there's a relationship with the ER system because there's the county has contracts with the hospitals that have ERs too about the different services that they provide. There's a phrase for it. I forgot what it is. Basically, indigent care. There's an indigent care contract that the county has with the hospitals too. And so it's a 3-way relationship that made this situation a reality. And I'm going to lay. I will lay.
Oh, I think it honestly just happened to be a crazy fucking time that it just happened to be that there were not enough.
I think so too. Ambulances. But again, if the contract was set up that you have to have a certain amount of response time or something like that, then I would think that as AMR you would say, okay, we're going to set our trucks out the way we send our trucks out, the way the data says we send our trucks out, but we have an on-call system or something like that, that if we need to throw 3 more trucks out real quick, we can do it. Because that's, I think, how I would set something like that up. It's like, okay, this is the data. We're working on the data. We're putting the data.
I mean, that takes time. Essentially, you would need a whole other crew. You need like a driver and another EMT.
Sure. Well, they're not all working every day. It's not like they're working
exactly.
All
it's not like they're on a call either.
You can make that a thing. It's not illegal to have people on call, which basically says that you are not working but included in your salary is the requirement to be on call a certain number of days a week or a certain number of days a month. And so when we put our schedule out for the month, you're working 4 days a week and you're on call 1 day a week. And you're getting paid for 5 days a week. I don't know, whatever the fucking contract set that they have.
Oh, I may have an end to ask a question of that.
Okay. I don't know if that's how they do it, but it is certainly a legal option as an employer that you can do that. You could do on-call employees.
All right.
And you can have minimal requirements of what they are allowed and not to do. Like you have to be in the region. You can't leave the state if you're on call. You need to stay sober.
All right. I say, this may have been the first time it's been reported upon. Maybe it's happened many of other times in recent times, but I think it just happened to be a crazy fucking day that there just happened to be that many people that
I agree.
Called 911 like, I don't know, I feel kind of funny. Please send an ambulance
I don't
out.
disagree with that, but I do think that at the core, the agreement, if
I can't blame it all on ambulatory care as far as like an ER, a hospital.
I think
we have a multitude of hospitals, and I think that may break down more into like a contract that AMR, whoever has with like, oh, I pick somebody up, I'm going to take them directly to your hospital, not the closest hospital, just whatever hospital that I'm contracted with.
That is baked into the cake of the contract that AMR has with county too, and county needs that needs to be consideration the county has. But at the same time, too, is that there are different specialties that each ER has.
No, I'm saying you can't break down. You can't blame the ER because AMR was like, oh, well, they were full. It's like, well, that's not all the hospitals. You may have to drive a little bit further, but I'm sure there's another ER that probably has better availability than the one you happen to be sitting at for fucking 45 minutes.
I would think
saying, I have nothing else to do. Like, I have to wait here before I can go pick somebody else up. I would think
that's the role of dispatch to play part of that too.
All right. And like you said, a lot of it may just come down to contract as far as like, we just don't take any patients there. Mm-hmm. That's bullshit.
Okay. Which contract are we bullshitting about?
As far as
we're assuming there's like
if
5
me as a company, Acme Ambulatory Services, I'm saying I'm only going to take my patients to Acme Hospital.
Well, then again, I'm going to put that on the county because the county allowed that in their contract. You cannot you could absolutely put that in contract when you take that contract on with the county, and the county says, "This we're going to pay you for these services, and you have to get people to hospitals. I don't care which one, but you're not allowed to pick one and only use one.
All right.
You have to use the one that at the time because with computers and shit nowadays, you could do it where it's like." Well, the data showed that 11:45 on Friday night that Fort Sanders had a 5-minute wait, UT had a 6-minute wait, and Tenova had a 1-minute wait. And you drove past Tenova with a 1-minute wait to go to UT with a 6-minute wait. Why?
Right.
And you could write that in the contract easily. It says you need to go to the nearest hospital with the shortest time. And I mean, hell, you could do it like
it sounds easy
with mapping. Like with mapping software, you could have it done automatically. That you're on a call, the computer does its thing, and then when you get that person in the car and say go, the computer says go to this hospital. You might drive past the hospital on the way, but the wait time at the hospital that's further away is shorter than the time it's going to take you to get to the one that has a longer wait time.
I mean,
it's perfectly fucking
sounds
doable.
simple. It sounds simple and logical, but at the same time, like you said, there's money involved in it.
And again, but if the county is part of the contract, then it's the county's fault to me. If it's a part of the county contract, then it's the county's fault. They need to be the ones that are on the lookout for me and you. That it's saying it's bullshit that if the ambulance is only going to take you to UT, that's bullshit. Whatever your agreement with UT is, you don't get to have ambulatory services with us if you only work with UT.
Right.
That's that. You take them to the hospital that they're going to get taken care of first. I don't care if you have to drive further because it's faster or whatever. I don't care.
All right.
That's the contract. If the county is involved, then they need that. Then they're supposed to look out for us. That would be my understanding of it.
I mean, that's kind of what happens when you allow private companies to come in and subcontract these things.
No.
Yes.
That's what you have. That's what happens when the government lets them.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
You're letting them. Don't you it's
Right,
so
never
cliche.
mind.
It's
Never mind.
It's so
Stop.
cliche to
Please
blame
stop.
the company.
Please stop. Please stop. Okay.
It's so cliche to blame the company.
Okay.
All right.
You're
So
right.
so that WJBE story that was from a couple years ago apparently had a ruling.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the backstory is. Do you remember the backstory on it?
He was apparently, I believe it was the FCC that was trying to take away his license from I think it was like a failure to pay taxes from like 8 years prior or whatever.
Oh, yeah. But that's because he was a anti-something voice or something like that.
I don't think that had anything to do with it.
For some reason, I remember.
I think he was
part of it
found
being-
guilty for not paying taxes like 8 years prior.
But he had settled that thing out.
Right, but he had settled out and he had
Just came over those guys. All right.
and I guess it just happened to still be on his record, and I guess the FCC, I guess in a, I don't know, possibly, rudimentary renewal process of renewing the license, happened to pick up on this previous fault or
Made us
whatever.
think about it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and read more on it because I remember being very upset about the original story, but then finding out that it was like 2 years old when we started talking about it and
Yeah.
that it was still in flux.
Right. That happens with a lot of court dates. Like, shit just kind of keeps getting pushed through for 2 or 3 years before it's ever
Right,
resolved.
and especially if it's something that gets like a bunch of people energetic and excited, then it gets going on forever and you forget.
I
about
mean,
it.
when you just have lawyers involved and the court system involved, like, you kind of come and argues and stuff, and it's like, okay, well, our next court date is going to be this.
Right, and then we
it's
have
like,
another
okay,
thing,
get
and
this
then our
in
next court
together.
date is this, and then it's this,
Right.
and then
And just
an injunction,
the way
and
the-
then a change of venue, and then all of a sudden it's 4 years later.
Right. I mean, unfortunately,
anybody
it's
who
something
was
that's just
interested-
the way the court system is.
Anybody who's interested or upset or excited about the particular topic is now long forgotten about it, and we're moving on. So is this your news of the weird, or you got something different?
No, I sent you the other that was, I think it was like 3 different kind of semi-news of the weird.
You sent me just these 3 today. Was there one a couple days ago?
I sent you the wrong one?
DeSantis doesn't rule out using missiles against Mexico?
Oh, no, it was the AP article.
About the spiders?
Yeah.
All right. Sam's news of the weird. All right, AP updated 6:02 p.m. on September 14th, 2023. Headline: Repurposing dead spiders, counting cadaver nose hairs, wins LG. Ig Nobles. Oh, see, I'm an idiot. Ig Nobles for comical scientific feats.
Yeah.
Okay.
Apparently there's a thing like the Ig Nobel Prize or whatever. It's supposed to be, I guess, like a play upon like the Nobel Prize.
So
I guess it's kind of like the
it's a spoof, intentional.
semi. But I
So
guess
it's
it's done for like actual like scientific accomplishments.
Oh, so it's like that thing that you sent me that podcast on, where it's the guy that did it was the senator from back in the day that like had his newsletter of the most ridiculous.
Kind of, but I mean, I've heard people talk about like the Ig Nobel Prize just as much as the what's the one of like people that die from doing stupid
Darwin
shit?
Awards.
The Darwin Awards, yeah. It's almost kind of like the Darwin Awards.
But so okay, so let me okay. So I haven't. I just read I didn't read this thing yet. I've just read the headline just now. So it is real studies that have been done, and it's a outside group that is looking at all the different studies that are done and finding what they feel is the most ridiculous.
Kind of ridiculous or funny, yeah.
But again, it's
I mean,
still
it's valid.
it's real studies,
Right,
real
right.
scientific studies,
Right.
that people are getting paid to produce, whether it's
Right,
grant
from-
money or
from-
private money or whatever.
For money to understand, yes.
Okay. So repurposing dead spiders, counting cadaver nose hairs, wins Ig Nobles for comical scientific feats. All right. Counting nose hairs and cadavers, repurposing dead spiders, and explaining why scientists lick rocks are among the winning achievements in this year's Ig Nobles. The prize for humorous scientific feat organizers announced on Thursday. The 33rd annual prize ceremony was pre-recorded online event, as it has been since the pandemic, instead of the past live ceremonies at Harvard. 10 spoof prizes were awarded to teams and individuals around the globe. Among the winners was Jan I'm not even going to try, of Poland, who earned the Chemistry and Geology Prize for explaining why many scientists like to lick rocks. I actually know this one because there's like, it's a way to identify some rocks.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so that's not really okay. A team of scientists in India, China, Malaysia, and the United States took the Mechanical Engineering Prize for its study of repurposing dead spiders to be used in gripping tools. The useful properties of biometric materials redefined by nature over time eliminate the need to artificially engineer these materials, exemplified by our early ancestors wearing animal hides as clothing and constructing tools from bones. We purpose leveraging biotic materials as ready-to-use robotic components in this work due to their ease of procurement and implementation. How do you easily procure a bunch of dead spiders?
It's possible. There's a bunch of them out there.
Yeah, but I feel like you're going to basically be growing colonies of dead spiders.
Right, and I'm sure that's probably what they do.
Okay. Other winning teams were lauded for studying the impact of teacher boredom on student boredom, the effects of anchovies' sexual activity on ocean water mixing,
Oh, I didn't see that.
how electrified chopsticks and drinking straws can change how food tastes, according to the organizers. The event is produced by the magazine Annals of Improbable Research and sponsored by the Harvard Radcliffe Science Fiction Association and the Harvard Radcliffe Society for Physics Students. Each winner or winning team has done something that makes people laugh, then think, according to the Annals of Improbable Research website. I mean, that's the fun stuff.
Yeah, I thought that was really
That's the
interesting.
good gear. All right. Well, that's a show, people. Let's wrap this up. Button. All right, that's almost an agreement, everybody. We did a show.